Call to order the regular city council meeting for Monday, February 3rd, 2025 at 5:30 PM. Moving on to the agenda, item 1, roll call.
Blessum.
Here.
Fuller.
Here.
Janser.
Here.
Olson. Pittner. Ross.
Here.
Samuelson.
Here.
Item 2, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to item number 3, the mayor's report. Item 3.1, a proclamation. City of Minot Mayor proclaims February 13th as Giving Hearts Day. Whereas Giving Hearts is an example of the private sector assisting charitable, nonprofit organizations that improve the quality of life for many members of our community, and has helped participating charities raise more than $195 million since its founding in 2008. And whereas the goal of Giving Hearts Day are to raise awareness of the charitable nonprofit sector and its organizations in North Dakota to promote online giving and provide donors with the opportunity to multiply the results of their giving. And whereas the charitable nonprofit sector supports individuals and families with program materials and funds that promote, encourage, and sustain independence and self-sufficiency. And whereas participating local charities include Camp Bentley, Crew Northern Plains Campuses, Dakota College at Botno Foundation, Dakota Hope Clinic, Greater Minot Concerts, Habitat for Humanity Northern Lights, Critter Crazy, Matthew 25 Project, Men's Winter Refuge, North Dakota Association for the Disabled, the Salvation Army, Youth for Christ, and YouthWorks. And whereas these charities have demonstrated a need for collaboration and resources and have combined their efforts for this 24-hour fundraising event that is dedicated to inspiring online donations at impactgiveback.org. Now, therefore do I, Tom Ross, Mayor of the City of Minot, hereby proclaim February 13th, 2025 as Giving Hearts Day in Minot and ask public officials, businesses, and community leaders and all Minot residents to observe this day with appropriate activities and programs, recognize charitable nonprofits, their staffs, and volunteers who provide essential services to our community, and support Giving Hearts Day by volunteering or providing financial support to charities in Minot and across North Dakota and Northwest Minnesota at givingheartsday.org. Signed by Mayor Tom Ross and signed by Michaela McWilliams. So we'll make sure we get that to them. Moving on with the mayor's report, just a few meetings since our last city council meeting. I did have a Task Force 21 meeting, workforce meeting at Job Service. We've attended a couple of legislative forums, legislative planning meetings. We had a State of the City planning meeting, a NAS authority meeting, a PD swearing in. I also attended Lieutenant Matt McLeod's funeral, along with a funeral of former city manager and former NAS Authority Committee member Bob Schemp, and then a PD swearing in, if I haven't already said that. So that is my report. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we will move on to the city manager's report. Harold.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, as always, there's the report included in the packet. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time if there are any.
Are there any questions of the city manager?
There's no questions. I have nothing further.
Okay, thank you, Harold. Moving on to the city attorney's report.
Mayor, members of the council, I've submitted a written report and stand ready to answer any questions at this time.
Are there any questions of the city manager? I'm sorry, city attorney. Seeing none, we will move on to item 5. That's the consent agenda. We have 19 items on our consent agenda. None have been asked to be pulled. So at this time, what are the wishes of the council?
I move approval.
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Paul. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion passed unanimously.
Moving on to item 6 on the agenda, action item 6.1, contract with Short Elliott Hendrickson Incorporated for airport snow removal equipment acquisition number 2025-500000. What are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor,
Mark,
I'll move the recommended action.
we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Scott. Discussion. Any discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Moving on to 6.2, 8th Avenue Southeast at Burdick Expressway pavement marking considerations. What are the wishes of the council?
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion by Mike, second by Paul. Discussion. Any discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Please record your vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Moving on to item 6.3, Fall Cleanup Week discussion. What are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Scott.
I would move that we continue offering fall curbside pickup.
Second.
We have a motion to continue fall curbside pickup and a second. Discussion. Mike?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think for this, and Jason, certainly we'd love to hear from you a little bit on it. As I take a look at it, I think as the transition was made away from the old trash pickup, which was pile it up however you wanted, and we'd come by twice a week and pick it up. I think part of the sort of the deal that was made with the residents of the city was that this would be a possibility going forward. And I think it's important that we do that. Now, I know there are some considerations. I read through the things in the memo. I guess from my perspective, a couple pieces of it. Number one, and Jason, please fill in if I'm a little bit off. But my take on it is, number one, ending it is unlikely to have any material dollar savings. We're certainly diverting resources, and we're waiting on things that will be done sooner rather than later. But unless this is all overtime, I don't think we've got extra cost with the staff. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessam, maybe before we get into that, I do have about a 5-slide presentation. So, T, if you could bring that up. Here we go. All right, so just to kind of recap where Alderman Blessam started, so in 2017, we made the transition from basically whatever you want on the curb, we transitioned to a containerized automated collection type service. Part of that service, we offer twice a week collection, and all the trash must fit in the container, which, like Alderman Blessam said, there was a reduction in the amount that we collected during each collection. And then we do offer a bulk collection service. So if you call and schedule it, there's a fee. We come and we pick up washers, dryers, bulkier, larger items. And then we did implement the spring and fall cleanup events as part of that. So I just threw a couple of pictures on here just to remind everybody what it used to look like on garbage day. The top picture, that is a picture from garbage day. That is not from a fall or spring cleanup event. So, and then how it looks today. These are actual piles from spring or fall cleanup. So basically, we divide the town into quadrants, and we go out on 4 days. Monday, I think it's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and we pick up a different quadrant of town and pick all this stuff up. So what does it take? It takes about 50 members of staff. And unfortunately, it's not members of my department. It's a sanitation activity, but we have to rob employees from street, storm sewer, airport, landfill, water treatment, water distribution, sewer, and property maintenance. So there's about 2,000 hours of staff time that Those are hours and money that's not budgeted necessarily in the sanitation department. It's just those hours that are coming from those departments. And then there's about 30 pieces of equipment, lots of different pieces of equipment that go out. And, estimated, using some averages, each event probably costs about $130-ish thousand. And as we've done this now for about 7 years, there are some opportunity costs that we're missing out on. When we take the entire street and storm sewer department off the streets, they're not out filling potholes, they're not street sweeping, they're not maintaining alleys, and they're not doing roadway patching. So when this event happens in late October, like it generally does, we're running right up against like the last couple weeks before hot mix becomes unavailable. Freezing temps start putting a damper on using vectors and cleaning out storm sewers. So it's, like I said, it's taking the crews off the street during a pretty critical time of year for the street department and some of the other activities as well. We did do some safety analysis, had the HR department pull some numbers. So the rate of injury during the spring and fall cleanup events is much higher. If you compare these 2 weeks versus regular, you have about a 400% greater chance of being injured during spring and fall cleanup than you do during your regular work, I guess, in quotes, regular work. And then if you look at the history, we had about, since 2019, we had 14 injuries, had a real cost of $45,941.41, and then 104 time lost days. And then oddly enough, when you look at spring versus fall, the fall event accounted for 95% of the injuries, which I was surprised by, not necessarily knowing why the fall event has the most injuries, but that's what the data showed. So some of the statistics, so if you average up the spring collection event, we average about 480 tons for the spring cleanup. That number falls to about 300 tons. So during the fall event, we don't mobilize a smaller crew, smaller staff. It's basically the same effort because we don't really know how much garbage is out there prior to going out and driving around. So there's we put all that effort forward and we're collecting about 40% less than we do in the spring. So alternatives, we would still continue to offer the free dumping at the landfill, which a lot of people utilize. I think during that week we get upwards of 400 or 500 people that take advantage of that. And then we would encourage use of our bulk collection service so we can schedule it. It's more manageable. We can schedule it. We have staff available, and we can basically route our trucks to take care of it. So, there.
I get hidden.
Mike?
All right, so let me start here. So Harold, do we, to get at the dollars, do we move money around when other departments are helping with sanitation during these weeks?
No, we don't. They would come out of the accounts. So that you have multiple enterprise funds here and some general fund, but we're using already budgeted personnel costs to conduct this. But
So back to my original question then, Jason, in my mind, there might be some incremental cost because of the extra equipment and fuel and things like that. But in terms of staff costs, the people are working, we're paying them their salaries, right?
That-
I mean,
that's
so there's
correct.
certainly
Yeah.
opportunity cost of other things that we could be doing.
That's
without
correct.
question.
That's the main thing.
So when we look at a cost of $130,000, my point is if we stop doing it, we're not going to lower everybody's trash rates to account for the 130. Right? I mean, that's not the proposal on the table. The proposal on the table is stop doing it and still keep the same rates that we've got today. Okay, and I guess, so for my colleagues, a big thing for me is I am not about giving less service for the same dollars. I mean, that to me is a given. If we were considering doing this, we would certainly need to give them a break on their pricing. So that would be a no-go for me without it. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor?
Rob?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Alderman Blessum. From what I remember, this was part of the deal or the promise the city made when we said we would go back to the new trash collection system, that we would have 2 annual pickups a year, one in the spring and one in the fall. And so to take services away, I don't think is a good idea, and I would be against it as well.
Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do remember that history, and I understand that, and I think there's some validity for taking that approach. One question I had was, you stated, or your slide, I think, said that if there were no fall event, that you would encourage people to use the bulk pickup service. I mean, is there any way to have a sale on that, or run a special rate or something if the curbside thing were to go away?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Janser, yeah, I mean, anything's possible. Currently, with the rate change in January, bulk collection is $15 per large bulky item. We're currently looking at ways to modify that. Sometimes bulky doesn't take into account if they just have like a lot of extra trash. So we're looking at basically, instead of per item, like a quantity collection. But certainly during the week of spring collection, we could offer that at a discounted rate.
Yeah, if I follow up, just because I do have a concern about, folks who have something that turned up over the summer that, they're holding, and, they don't have a pickup, they don't have, a method to get it out to the landfill. And, if we were to approve this, I think it would be important to have some method of, giving them a break to be able to get that stuff handled. But
Absolutely, we could look into it for sure.
Mike?
One other thing, Jason, is one thing, I think you were talking about what was going on in the fall. Is there a different schedule that would help you guys? Is it, if we did it in August instead of September, or is there something we could do that way?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Blessing, we'd have to look at calendars, then that's generally when, all that stuff is really going on, like the
Yeah.
street patching,
Heavier.
all that stuff, we're right in the heart of all of it. So I don't know that it makes it, there's not a convenient time to do it, probably is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Lisa?
Oh, thank you. One other idea that popped into my head, instead of a week, because then I acknowledge that we're taking all of these employees away from their job for an entire week, but how about a month of Wednesdays? And you have the quadrants divided out that way. Would that help at all?
Mayor Ross, Alderwoman Olson, certainly. There's, being cognizant of the change we made in 2017, we've offered, we did the spring and fall. During those weeks, we offer free collection at the landfill. We offer, there's a week of free dumping at the landfill during July. So we've tried to open up avenues, for, and that's self-service, basically. People have to haul it on their own. If we staggered it over 4 Wednesdays for a month, people usually start putting stuff out, weeks before the collection event. So now if the collection takes place over, I think we're going to have a pretty dirty looking city for probably a good 6 weeks instead of just that couple weeks, maybe a week before and then the week of. But like I said, there's certainly ideas out there that we could certainly look into it further.
Well, I think at this time, I think, the feedback that you're getting from the council is, if you come back with a plan, a plan that does the same thing but maybe takes a different look at it, I think it'd be something that the council would probably entertain. I just don't think that plan is here yet. And because of the promises, the promise made, I think I'm going to have to stay with the current plan
right.
myself. So.
Yeah. We will certainly take the input back and consider it, see if there's anything that comes to mind, and we'll go from there.
You got about 9 months.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing further, we have a motion and a second on the floor. If there's nothing further, please record your vote. And the motion is,
To continue with the fall cleanup event services. The motion passed unanimously.
Moving on to item 6.4, the transit two-year phased approach analysis and ADA complementary paratransit plan service agreement. What are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mike.
I would move approval of the staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion by Mike, a second by Paul. Did I hear? Discussion. Any discussion?
So, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Mike.
In the days since we got the agenda, I was able to sit down with Brian and talk through this a little bit because, certainly transit's been on my mind as we went through the budget process. What I gained from that, and certainly guys, if you have anything you want to add to what I'm about to say, please do. What I'm gaining from that is that, the process that we're going to go through over the next couple of years related to public transit is not going to be simple or easy. As we transition into a bigger size city under federal rules, there are a lot of new requirements that are going to come with that. And it's going to make it a lot more difficult to work through the process. And what I feel confident in is what Brian and Brian have talked through in terms of their process that they're doing with this agenda item. This is a complicated agenda item to read, let alone what they are actually talking about doing. They're intending a process that includes studying what it actually is that we need and making sure that we're matching our services and our revenue and our public funds and everything else that goes with it to what the actual need is in the city. And I'm excited about that. They are, passionate about what they do. And I expect a good outcome from that. But I think we all need to understand as a council that that's not going to be easy. The federal funding is going to change. How we handle paratransit is going to change. There's requirements on us in terms of our budget, in terms of what the FTEs need to look like that work for us. There's actual titles that the federal government requires. And so what I was a little bit concerned about, and the reason I raised the question and had the discussion with them, was this felt a little bit like the path we started down with the fire FTEs that we're adding now over the coming years. We're sort of getting some unfunded mandates that go with this that set us up in the future to spend some money, but we've got to make sure we've got a good plan. And that's what they're working on right now, and that's what this agenda item is. So I would urge, my colleagues to agree with this and let them start working that plan because it's a long road.
Okay. Mark? Did you have?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thanks. I don't disagree with what Mike said. I think it's important to note that this transition is, with Minot City Transit, but it's also part of DOT. It's also part of the Surface Basin Transportation because of the part that they play in the community. And so it's a comprehensive look and approach. And so I think having them go through this process as they study it and come up with the right solutions is the right way to go.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor. If there's no further discussion, please record your vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Moving on to item 6.5, contract for airport general aviation access road rehabilitation project design services. What are the wishes of the council?
Move approval.
We have a motion by Lisa. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mark. Discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor. If there's no further discussion, please record your vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Moving on to item 6.6, Chapter 23, Lighting Ordinance. What are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
I'd move
Mike.
approval.
We have a motion by Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Rob. Discussion?
Mr.
Mike,
Mayor, if
go
I
ahead.
could, so maybe for the city attorney, Steph, is one of the questions that I got back in feedback as I talked to folks that could potentially be impacted here is there a worry in any of the definitions? And the one that was specifically brought to me was the idea of something strobing. Are those the types of things that we would normally put in an ordinance to actually define them? Or are we using the common use of words like that? Because is blinking strobing? Is a moving light along a string strobing? That's kind of the worry that was brought to my attention.
We could certainly offer clarification on that. Alderman Blessam, I guess in my opinion, I don't know that I would consider strobing to be a rapid flash more so than a tracking type of flash. But we could definitely provide more clarification if that's a concern that's been raised.
I think, is that something with our process, because we need 2 readings on each ordinance, right? Is that something that can be handled simply in the next reading, and it doesn't have to slow us down? Because, in general, Mr. Mayor, if I could continue.
Yep.
For me, this got to what I was looking for. What I was looking for out of this process was that we have an ordinance in place that if we truly have somebody who's acting out of line, that we have some method for the police department to work with that and solve it. And I feel like this does that. I thought that the language was good, and I think that it's a great start to that. This was the one item that was brought to my attention, and so I wouldn't mind seeing that clarified just a little bit. But outside of that, I felt pretty good about it.
Okay, we can definitely do that. If there's a definition that the concerted citizen or that they have in mind for strobing, we can definitely take a look at that. Otherwise, we'll kind of go back to the drawing board and see what we can present. But it would still be able to be an amendment presented on second reading at the next council meeting, and then it could be approved after that.
Okay, sounds good.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Rob?
again, for staff, I think, and to Mike's question, you know, some of these new ornamental lights that you're able to put on houses and buildings and everything, they twinkle, they sparkle, they move, they do this. So I think we really need to define that some of that isn't strobing, because a person could make that strobing if they really wanted to, right? Something twinkling like that, hey, that's strobe effect. So I would reiterate Mike's thing, we really need to define what strobing is.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor. If there are no further discussion, please record your vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Moving on to item 6.7, Chapter 23, Noise Ordinance. What are the wishes of the council?
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion by Rob. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mark. Discussion. Any discussion? You'll have an opportunity at the end for personal appearances. Seeing no further discussion, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Please record your vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Moving on to item 6.8, State Revolving Loan Fund, loan application for lead service line identification and replacement. What are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the recommendation.
We have a motion by Mark. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Rob. Discussion. Any discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Please record your vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Moving on to 6.9, Article 3, Division 1, Section 28-85/8687, Sidewalk Snow Row Heights Removal Ordinance Amendment. What are the wishes of the council?
Move approval.
We have a motion by Lisa. Is there a second? Second. Second by Paul. Discussion.
Mr.
Mike.
Mayor, so back onto this one, and I'll be honest, I read it Thursday, and I'm trying to remember exactly what I read, but it brought to mind again for me the same thing that I brought up a few times around our Safe Routes to School projects and the idea of putting more sidewalks in, which I think most people want. But this does raise the question again of, you know, the person who never asked for a new sidewalk and is now faced with removing snow from it on a day like today where it's, you know, 16 below or whatever it is and blowing. And so, you know, I guess I think we want to be cognizant of it. From remembering this, I think this actually helps that, because I think we give them a little bit more time, and you know, we've got some mechanisms that make sense. So that's a good thing. But I think we just want to keep that in mind, because this is, you know, this is something, again, I go back to that kind of unfunded mandate idea. We're asking somebody, no, you're taking a sidewalk whether you want it or you don't, and it's your responsibility to keep it up. And if it ever breaks down, you've got to rebuild it as well. So, thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Please record your vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Moving on to item 6.10, settlement agreement. What are the wishes of the council?
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion by Rob. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mark. Discussion. Any discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Please record your vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Moving on to 6.11, approval of the interim police chief agreement. What are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Lisa.
I would move approval on alternative 2.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion. Lisa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things before I kind of describe my rationale. In reading through the documentation that was sent out to all of us, I certainly believe that Mr. Otterness would be the right choice. I think that he is very capable of taking this position, but I don't think it's the right time. And I'm going to reference back the past few months what our police department has gone through. They've gone through an investigation and a report that gave out some kind of embarrassing information that some probably did not want to have made public. They've had an officer-involved shooting. They've had 2 deaths. And I feel that they have gone through a lot, and allowing Captain Plessis, who has been the interim chief, to remain on for the next few months until we could find the permanent replacement or permanent chief would be the best for the morale and the healing of the police department.
Any further discussion? Harold.
I will preface this by saying that I've appreciated the job that Captain Plessis has done in serving as our interim. He's done a fantastic job. I would argue that he has had the equivalent of probably a 5 to 10 year police chief experience within the last few months, and he has performed admirably. My recommendation this evening is premised on having considered all factors, including all of the factors that Alderwoman Olson has outlined here. My goal, and one of the things that has come out through all the aspects that Alderwoman Olson just outlined, is a need for quality, strong leadership for our department, to put them on a path of not only being better in the short term, but also in the long term. And I believe at this time that we need someone that comes in with no historical knowledge and connection, no emotional connections, no relationship connections, but has the knowledge, the skills, and the experience to lead this department forward to where they need to go. And in essence, help us as an organization identify our blind spots that we right now, because we're emotionally attached and historically attached to these individuals in this department, that I think to some degree that we are proceeding blind to. And so that is the main reason why I have made the recommendation to bring in Mr. Otterness to help us do that. These are things that he has helped the city of Fargo do, and isn't going to come with helping us figure out how to do it. This is an individual that has done it and done it successfully, and that I think our department and our community and our organization desperately need at this time, which is why I've made this recommendation to go forward with this. And so, should the council approve the motion that's on the table, I would also like some direction from council that the interim chief be only to maintain the status quo. Because I think it'd be important that the next police chief be the one to make decisions with regards to policy changes and those kinds of things. My concern here, though, is that, and I outlined this a little bit earlier in some conversations that I've had previously, if you lay out the timeline that alternative number 2 outlines, you're looking at a 3 to 6 month process to do a nationwide search. And that's assuming we only have to do it once. North Dakota and Minot is a difficult area to recruit to. And I've been committed to making sure that we find the right person to do this job, not just fill the position with whomever. So you're looking at a 3 to 6 month process to do that one time, assuming we don't have to do it twice. A new chief comes in. I usually give direction to newly appointed department heads that the first 6 months they're to focus on learning and connecting with our processes and our staff, to not come in immediately making changes. The next 6 months, they should be laying the foundation of communication and assessment of the changes that they feel necessary. And changes don't happen until probably about 12 months on the job at the earliest. So you add all that together, you're looking at a 15 to 18 month time frame before we start implementing changes on behalf of our department. I think the condition that our department is in right now, I don't recommend we wait 18 months to do that. So I think bringing in an interim chief who has the experience and ability to do that, to help expedite that. We may have to make some changes that aren't popular. And having the interim chief be the one that's, for lack of better terms, blamed for that. And then let the new chief come in and maintain those changes going forward, I think creates an environment that allows the department to heal quicker and get to a better place in a more expedited process. I'm trying to balance doing the right thing and doing it quickly, and those are the premises for my recommendations this evening. And in doing my due diligence, I have confidence in Mr. Otterness to be able to do this. I'm sure the public is aware that we had scheduled a special council meeting for an appointment of an interim here a couple weeks ago. And as part of my due diligence, I did not have the confidence in that, so I pulled the plug on it. Because again, I'm committed to make sure that we have the right person at the right time in this place. And knowing some of the things that we have to address going forward, some of those things, to be honest with you, I don't want to put Captain Plessis in responsibility for. I think he needs someone, I think the department and I as the city manager need someone that I know is looking at this from a very unbiased standpoint. That isn't taking into account that they've worked with an individual for 15 to 20 years. And the emotion of everything that's gone on here over the last several months. And I think we're at a time that we need someone who is unbiased and unfettered by those things, but has the experience and the leadership to be able to help move us forward, even on an interim basis. And so I would again ask the council to consider my recommendation.
Thank you, Harold.
I'd also add that Mr. Otterness is here in the audience if the council has any questions of him.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second on the floor. If there's no further discussion, please record your vote.
Hold on, what's the motion again? Lisa's motion, right? Option 2?
It's option two.
Alternate,
Yeah,
alternative number 2.
Yeah, which would be to direct the city manager to continue with the interim chief, which would be Captain Plessis, and proceed with a national recruitment process for a permanent appointment.
The motion passed 5-2 with dissents from Janser and Ross.
Yes, go ahead.
Given that that motion is passed, can I at least ask the council to consider covering the transportation costs of Mr. Otterness coming up here to be here this evening?
I'll make that motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. I will talk slower so you have time to. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Once Kayla has it ready to go, please record your vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Moving on to item 6.12, human resource.
Mayor?
Oh,
Mr.
go
Mayor,
ahead.
Just
Mike.
one thing. I wanted to follow up a little bit on what Harold was talking about. There was another if this motion passes that he was asking for. And Harold, can you clarify that for us? Is there additional action you would like from us? Is there something you would ask of us? I think what it was asking Captain Plessis to maintain the status quo and to not implement changes. Is that what I heard?
That is correct. Because I think there's changes there that need it needs to be made by a police chief.
Mr. Mayor, if I can continue with
Go ahead,
that.
Mike.
I'm I guess I'm willing to bring something along those lines in the form of a motion. I'm trying to figure out where that goes exactly. But the thought that does come to my mind, though, I feel like one of the main issues that we've got today is that Harold, you're not getting the information from the department that's needed in order to lead it from a city perspective. And I would hate to think that if we knew that there were things that could be done better in the interim period, that Captain Plessis working with you could not get those implemented. I would really like to think that that's exactly what we would start doing. And I think a little of what we've been missing is that you haven't had the ability to work with the leadership team to make those kinds of things happen.
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessum, I would say that communication with Captain Plessis has been very good and phenomenal over the last several months. I mean, we have weekly meetings to talk through issues and those kinds of things. He's very capable of maintaining the status quo, which is what we've been doing, which has been difficult to do over the last few months with everything that we've endured. And it's been admirable. But when we start talking about whether or not we should change shifts, whether or not there's new policies that we should implement, moving forward with the recommendations from both the CPSM study and the investigation, those are policy changes that have long-term consequences that I want to make sure that we have somebody that is going to be a part of the picture long-term of not only helping us develop those, but enforce those over a long period of time in moving this department forward to being better what it is today. And I want to clarify here too, like I don't want this to sound like our police department's doing a horrible job and they're just messing everything up. I would say our police department is made up of fantastic individuals that are doing their best every single day. And there is more that they're doing right than that needs to be looked at and adapted and adjusted and fixed. But we do have, I'm going to be honest and real, we have some things that we need to work on and address to be a better department, to be a department that our officers want to stay and be a part of. We have, 17 vacant positions today? 16, 17 vacant positions? And it seems like every time we hire two, we lose two more. And we fail to gain ground. And so there are aspects here that I believe should be underneath the purview of a police chief to make those decisions, and I don't believe it's appropriate for an interim chief to make those decisions.
So, Mr.
Mike.
Mayor, if I can continue, Harold, Captain Plessis in his acting chief role would report to you. So that relationship between boss and worker, that would be at your direction, correct? So I guess my thought is, I don't know that we need a council action directing the interim chief on what he should or shouldn't do. That is your role in the process. Am I wrong there?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessum, you're not wrong. At the same time, I don't declare to be an expert of all operations police. And I rely heavily on the expertise and the experience of all my department heads to advise me on what's best on how to move forward. And, having a chief that has that experience is something that I rely on. And that would be absent in this case. So again, I would be uncomfortable with making long-term changes in policy decisions affecting the department without having confidence in that expertise that we're doing it correctly.
So, Mr. Mayor, just to continue, I guess I think what I'm hearing is that we shouldn't expect things to change greatly during this interim period. We should expect things to run well and to take care of the requirements that the city has for its police department, but we shouldn't expect great strides in the types of foundational changes that are going to need to come. We're going to need to wait for a permanent chief for that.
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blesson, that's correct. In essence, I don't really need a motion from the council to direct me from that. What I'm stating is that with this decision, we're going to slow down the process of making any changes because I, as the city manager, am going to wait for that expertise and resource to be there before I'm willing to move forward with execution of anything. We can have meetings and talk about potential changes and those kinds of things and start laying the groundwork, but with exception of maybe some certain circumstances, I believe we need a police chief at the helm with the experience to help verify that we've identified the problem correctly and the solutions that we've identified are going to be the best way to address that issue and are in accordance with best practices, that we're providing the best services to our staff and to our public in general.
Paul?
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to kind of piggyback off some of those comments, to your point, Harold, it takes maybe about a year for some of these changes to actually come to fruition, right? We have this learning period. You got to get to know the department, and then after that, it takes 6 months to really identify and come up with a plan. So we're looking to place an interim chief into a 12-month timeline that, at the end of that timeline, we're going to be introducing a permanent chief that may look at some of these changes that are made or recommended and have to start that learning curve all over again. And when I looked at Dale and his leadership over the interim, maintaining the status quo actually that bad of a thing. We identified through our independent investigation poor leadership and lack of communication, lack of visibility from leadership were driving forces. That was the common theme throughout that entire document of 100 and some odd pages. And I think if we just start with that for the next 3 to 6 to 9 months in the time that it takes, I think that is progress. I think that potentially is moving this organization forward and moving the police department forward and bridging some of those gaps between the leadership team there and with the city manager. I don't view it as necessarily a step backwards or even pausing some of that. I do believe steps can be made in the right direction, and again, I guess we're kind of nominating Dale for a position, and if Dale feels like he doesn't feel the need to feel the ability to man that, I trust in his judgment and your judgment to find an alternative solution if that's appropriate. So.
Rob?
Sorry, thank you. Just real quick, the only thing I would caution in this whole thing is, and I understand, Harold, where you're coming from, long-term fundamental changes to the department, but we can't put Captain Plessis in this interim role and cut his knees off so he can't do anything either. There's got to be that ability to work with the city manager and the other individuals to do the things that need to be done in the department. So we're not talking that kind of not being able to do anything here, right?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Fuller, those will be discussed on a case-by-case basis. I mean, I guess ultimately it'll be to my judgment of whether or not I feel comfortable that we're going to move forward with that change, because it doesn't matter who the police chief is versus what needs to wait for the police chief to come in and give us direction on that. So, I mean, and again, I don't want to make this sound like I don't want to work with Captain Plessis. He's been a breath of fresh air. He's been great to work with over the last several months. I have no doubt of his commitment to the department and trying to make it better. He's a man of integrity. There's a reason why I tapped him as the interim chief during this time period. So we will continue to work on that. We'll continue to work on a day-by-day basis and case-by-case basis on those issues. I just wanted it to be known that with this decision, there will be some things that I would recommend we hold off on until we have a chief in place to help us make that decision.
Lisa?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I certainly do want to say that I respect everyone that's been part of this process, because I believe that there has been a lot of thought and hard work put into all of this. And the reason that I had recommended alternative 2 was I truly believed that we would move rather quickly into the search. I don't know that it needs to be a long time before we start that search. it could possibly be a longer time before we find the right person. But I would hope that we can give the direction to the city manager to start the process of searching very soon.
Any further discussion? Yes, Mike.
Just to clarify on that one point, I think that is the motion, right? I think it directs us to immediately begin that search. I think that's what that is.
And
correct?
that was my hope, certainly.
Is that a motion?
No, it's.
It was part of alternative two.
It's already.
Okay.
Just a clarification. I don't
Okay.
know if it was necessarily stated exactly that way, but just as a clarification.
So there's no motion, that was just discussion on the dais. Any further discussion? Okay, moving on to item 6.12 on the agenda, Human Resource Director Recruitment Services. What are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move the recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion by Mark, second by Rob. Discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Please record your votes.
The motion passed unanimously.
Moving on to item 7 on the agenda, personal appearances. Now is an opportunity for those who wish to step forward to address the council. Now is your opportunity to do so. I would, the only request is that we would ask you to limit your comments to 5 minutes out of respect for others who wish to address the council. Now is your opportunity to come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and all the present. My name is Kent Bale. My wife and I live at 906 Village Avenue in the Edgewood Village. Over the last couple of months, we've had an email and in-person discussion with members of the city in regards to noise concern that we have coming from the next door neighbor's generator sitting a few feet away from our property. The generator runs 20 minutes every week, 12 months a year. This older generator runs at about 3,000 RPMs. Unlike the newer ones that have the eco mode that slow down or speed up according to the RPMs they need. The first meeting we had was in person at a residence with Officer Scheid, who gave his report that the generator was clearly over the decibel limits. As a HOA, we were allowed to shut it down, and then we got an opinion from Tom Joyce that said the noise was similar to a lawnmower, so it would be allowed. The noise may be similar to a lawnmower, but it is not anywhere close to a lawnmower. Allowable reading for outdoors at that time was 55 decibels. We were told this lawnmower is similar to this generator, but a lawnmower moves around the yard, front to back, side to side, is here for 2 minutes, there for 2 minutes. It might have the same decibels, but it's nowhere close. Now I see with this ordinance, they're actually looking to increase it from 55 to 60. I don't understand why you'd want to increase the residential decibels. I wrote back to Tom to ask for members of the governing body to make an on-site observation, which he did agree to. This past week, Councilman Janser and Brian Billingsley, along with Sergeant Foley, made an on-site visit. The report for those who have not seen it reads that when the generator is running, inside the house, it's around 60 decibels. Inside our house, outside the living room window, it's 70 or better. Out the front door, it's around 70. Sergeant Foley stated in his report that there is a violation, but he thought the HOA should take action before the city steps in. But this would involve costs and legal fees for the association, and we feel that the city could address this in a better way. We feel the city could set a precedent to solve this problem for this kind of stationary motor. This is what I consider, this is a stationary. This is running over the city ordinance decibel limit by making these units run at 55 decibels or less. I'll try to make comparisons for residents that many of you are not part of an HOA community, because they say our HOA can address this. But those that don't live in an HOA community, I feel is the same thing. Up until 6 years ago, we lived on a farm. The most annoying thing to compare this to was our air compressor. It was loud and obnoxious, of anybody that's been around one of them. It's not louder than a lawnmower even, but it would just wear on you listening to it run. And like this generator, it is also a stationary engine and in high RPM and stays at that RPM until it kicks out. But for us, for 20 minutes, 52 weeks a year, it definitely wears on you. When that air compressor was running, you could not visit the same way with this generator while it is running. And now in your exemptions in an ordinance is given the exemption for the air compressor and a generator. It just is not right. So it makes me wonder, so what if a person had an air compressor, like I just talked about, up the street on Hiawatha from our area? That's a very nice area, just like we have at Edgewood. And their hobby was sandblasting car parts in their garage, and they got tired of listening to their air compressor. They decided they'd set it outside. Now the neighbors have to listen to it because this is a decision that was made because of this exemption. Anytime anyone stops by our house and it is running, you cannot talk to them over the generator because of the decibel readings at our front door and driveway. We also cannot enjoy our backyard when it is running. We must go in the house and they're still wearing on you, and like Officer Foley reported, after 20 minutes of talking over it, he stated, quote, "There was a reprieve of noise and an almost utter quiet that filled the house again." We always have had that feeling every week. When it finally shuts off again, we hate to see a possible devaluing of our property because of this generator. As the saying goes, with all problems, there is a solution. We hope a solution can be found for this type of situation so others do not experience what we have. We feel the decibels should stay at 55 and this generator could be brought into compliance somehow. We believe as homeowners, this is why this ordinance should be voted down and revisited and take our views into consideration. I thank you for your time. I would ask Councilman Janser, being he was good enough to come and sit at our house and listen to it, if he would have any comments on this.
I did attend the test, and the memo that was sent out by the officer who at this test had an actual decibel reading instrument as opposed to a phone app or something less accurate. His readings that he picked up are in his memo, which
I have copies of Officer Foley report with me if anybody wants to look at them.
So, I have since been in contact with the people next door with the generator. I was told today that the frequency for it running can be cut in half. They've determined that their manufacturer says it's fine if it only runs twice a month instead of 4 times a month. And I suggested to them that they consider getting some kind of, for lack of a better term, sound hood or some enclosure that would dampen the noise or contain the noise that it's putting out. So that's where we are as of tonight.
Appreciate that. I guess I just look at it and say, this could happen down the street. We live in a retirement village. Other people could have the same, they could move off the farm, bring their generator with them. It could be one of the ones that are 10-year-old, and it could be just as loud, and we're back to square one. And if we can stay at that 55 range, and thanks to Councilman Janser speaking with these people, that there's soundproofing, there's sound walls, there's all kinds of things that could be done. We live in a small community. We have a very nice community. I don't think it should be slighted by having this generator. If you want to stop and visit, or you want to stop and visit, we can't. That's wrong.
Paul?
Just a quick question. How often does it run?
It runs once a week, 20
Once a week?
minutes.
And for 20 minutes?
They
Once a
call it
week, yeah.
exercising. When I asked the new gen sets at the one show, they said, well, they still recommend doing that. On the farm, we had generators. We'd run them twice a year just to make sure they worked. So once a week, and I'm sure the new ones run at a low idle, the eco mode. And then, so when I saw your ordinance was saying we wanted to increase our residential rate from 55 to 60, I said, that doesn't make any sense. And then to exempt some of the loudest things that are in the whole city. And then somebody could come down the street and add another generator to their house. We just had 2 people move in again this winter. They didn't have generators, but the one gentleman does have a generator. I understand the need for them. Somebody has medical needs or something, that's fine. But they don't even hear it run because it's the newer style and it just idles and it's just a low speed. So I just think this could be fixed. But when this starts at 3,000 RPMs and runs for 20 minutes, it's really, and like Sergeant Foley said, when it's stopped, it's really nice to hear that sound quiet.
Paul?
Is there a time, what, does it run at the same time? Is there,
Yes.
can you ask them to run it at a time that's not as inconvenient over the, I mean?
No, they changed it. It was at 4 o'clock every day, and that was, I'm glad they changed it because that was happy hour. So now they changed it to 11, they changed it to 11 o'clock. But, you know, I just don't think it's right, that's all. And living on the farm, it's just,
Mr. Rand, what was the reading that Officer Foley came up with?
when you sat in our kitchen table, it was 58 to 60, and he opened the window at the dining room and it was 72. When he walked outside, it's 68 to 70 out our front door. It sits about 25, 30 feet to the east. So when we pull up or you walk up, or Councilman Janser, you were standing outside.
Yeah, and I guess if it's 25 feet, that to me would be the max. I mean, these units are pretty close together, and there's a plastic fence that runs up kind of about even with where the generator sits, so it doesn't provide much sound buffering at all.
Generator sits about 7 feet off of our property line, which is the fence to the east.
Yeah,
And we have
so-
about, from the fence to our front door, I suppose there's roughly 20 feet.
Is it that much? Okay.
15 to
So it
20,
is,
I
I mean,
just-
it isn't far. It's pretty close proximity, so.
If I can continue, Mr. Mayor.
Mike.
So for the city attorney, Steph, is it 55 in the current ordinance, and the proposed one that we approved on first reading tonight does go to 60? Is that,
Yes, yep, that's accurate.
okay? Did the 60 come from what we're seeing kind of nationwide? Is that where more cities have it, or was there some logic to making that minor change?
Our assistant attorneys that worked on this aren't here tonight, but my understanding is that a lot of the logic that went into that was taken from what the typical decibel level is for common household appliances like lawnmowers, leaf blowers, things of that nature. So they were trying to make it not so restrictive that it would eliminate typical use of lawnmowers, things of that nature, but would restrict things that could be obnoxious. There is a reasonableness standard that typically comes with a lot of these nuisance violations, is what's acceptable according to a reasonable person standard. And that's something that is a gray area. That's just the nature of that particular arena of law. But to the extent that there is an HOA, those HOA rules can be more restrictive than what the typical city ordinances are. And so that's where I believe that recommendation about proceeding through the HOA may make the most sense here, especially in a community like Edgewood Vista, right?
Tough to do, Steph. It's we're gonna incur substantial legal costs to do this. We know, because the people are gonna come after the HOA, and we're gonna have to lawyer up, and that's not fair. You
Yeah.
can never just say, well, we're gonna pass this, because we had it shut down. We had it because of the decibel limit. And then I believe it was one of your assistant attorneys recommended that it's the same as a lawnmower, so without anybody coming to do an on-site visit. So thank goodness I asked, and Tom Joyce said, yeah, we'll come and listen to this. Before, they said, well, it's the same as a lawnmower. Well, maybe for decibels it isn't, but it is not the same as a lawnmower. I could stand up here and scream at you, and that's a decibel level, but I could walk around the room and scream at you, and it's a whole different deal. It's the same decibels, but it's not right here. And this is what this generator is. So, and then when I read through the exemptions, I'm going, two of the most obnoxious things I've ever been around is an air compressor and a generator, and both those are on the exemption list. I'm like, well, it doesn't make any sense. So if your assistant attorneys are doing this, I'd really like to visit with them, or just have somebody sit down and explain this to me. Because either they haven't been around a generator or they haven't been around an obnoxious air compressor.
And maybe that is where the solution lies in this, is maybe having some further meetings with city staff to kind of try to figure out how we can finesse this ordinance a little bit further to meet everybody's needs.
Yeah.
We're trying to find that balance in between having to have noise complaints upon noise complaints over in municipal court being litigated and being allowing people to use normal household items like lawnmowers, like things that are loud, just given their nature.
But this is an example where we could, like Councilman Janser said, we could put a wall up, we could put a cover on it, we could put something over it. I'm sure nowadays they have for these older generators.
Any further discussion? Thanks, Ken. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so, council, I mean, just for my further direction for what you would like our office to do, what we could do is we could set up further meetings to kind of take a closer look at this ordinance and see if there's any middle ground. We could meet with Mr. Bale, we could meet with the complainant and see if there's any further ground either side could give on either side to try to find that reasonableness standard within our ordinance. But again, it is a one-size-fits-all type of thing for the city. And so we want to try to create something that is going to meet the needs of most of our citizens, not just one explicit situation. So we don't want to swing the pendulum so far one way that we need to constantly be revisiting it. So that's my intention with this. So unless there's a motion directing me otherwise, we'll work with reaching out to both parties and see if we can kind of gather some more of your thoughts on this. So if you want to look at the ordinance, Mr. Bale, kind of make some notes on where you think that should go. That would be satisfactory to you and your other colleagues over at residing at Edgewood Vista, and we can take a look at that. Yes.
Okay, continuing on with personal appearances, now is your opportunity to step forward to address the council.
Hello, everyone. My name is Josiah Royce. Some of you have seen me before. We got a few new council members since then, so hello. Interesting times. Times are changing with this new Trump administration. A lot of good changes happening, and in the spirit of that, I thought this was a good time to come talk to you guys about some suggestions that I have. You guys are talking about healing within the police force. I can tell you this police force has had troubles for a long time. I could tell stories for days, but I won't. I've only got 5 minutes. But you guys are talking about healing and kind of putting Humpty Dumpty back together. I have a solution to proposition to put up. As Elon Musk is running his program where he finds government efficiency, cutting the fat like he did with Twitter, like what, 90% of their staff or something? That's what comes to mind. I've been thinking about this for a lot of years, and I'm finally comfortable enough to come talk to you guys about it. As he eliminates all sorts of government fat, and Trump's talking about getting rid of, income tax, the IRS, talking about getting rid of the FBI and the ATF. Now, those are government services. I personally don't feel very serviced by them. I feel like I'm kind of squashed by them. I can go buy a firearm and then find out 6 months later that the ATF says I can't have it. Well, okay, who's going to come and take it? Who's going to come and do something about that? That's where my solution here is proposed. Eliminating FBI, ATF, things like that. Right now we've got a broken police department that we're trying to figure out how to put back together. And that police department is a bureaucracy. I don't get to vote for the chief. That's what you guys do. It's very disconnected from the people of Minot. Now what I'm suggesting has been done before in much smaller towns. But I want to propose that we dissolve the police department by merging it with the sheriff's department. Merging with the sheriff's department because the people elect the sheriff. Now, all sorts of tyranny came down on us in 2020. Mask mandates, vaccine mandates, shutdowns, lockdowns. I lost my business. I owned a business downtown here, like a block or two from here. Yogify You. I lost it. It could not withstand being closed for months while I'm paying the rent, paying all the bills. That was wrong. It was flat out wrong. Yeah, I'm an adult. My customers are adults. If people wanted to come in and decide they didn't believe in that COVID nonsense, just like I didn't, that's up to them. Not up to the governor. Not up to anybody. We are adults. We don't need adult babysitters. We certainly don't need to pay for them. So the chain of tyranny. Everyone likes to blame Washington, D.C. for stuff like that. Or blame the governor. But the governor never showed up at my place. The people in D.C. didn't show up at my place. Who do they send? They send local law enforcement. Now, there's plenty of sheriffs across the country who said, we're not enforcing this. That's been done for years. In 1994, I believe it was, there's a huge Supreme Court case with the Clinton administration. Sheriff Richard Mack won that case on the 10th Amendment ruling. That's what it was about. The federal government was trying to tell the sheriffs what to do, trying to get them to enforce mandates that they said we're not going to enforce. So when you hear today, when the sheriffs say we're not enforcing that, that's because they won that Supreme Court case back in the 90s, thank God. But do they stop the police from enforcing such things? No, not really. And what is it, like 85% police and 15% sheriff's department? That's not cool. So it's like, great, but it doesn't do much good. It's nice in sentiment, nice to have your 15% cheer. But the people, I trust my neighbors. I trust the people in Minot. I saw the magic of Minot when the 2011 flood happened. Strangers opening their homes to others, strangers helping each other, showing up with pickup trucks and trailers to help each other out. I trust my neighbors. I trust them to make good decisions. I trust them in electing our law enforcement. Right now, if we have a bad chief, I need to convince the majority of you guys that it's a bad police chief and get you guys to come to these meetings and do all this and hire a new one. That's a lot of legwork. The sheriff can have a better relationship with the people in a one-on-one fashion. We already have it, but like I said, it's like a small percentage of law enforcement. Furthermore, by merging the departments, you've got duos and trios of cop cars that cruise Broadway and stuff looking for people to pull over for seatbelt violations and dark tinted windows and things like that that aren't really harming anybody. I don't want to pay for that. That is not up my alley of interest. If I could like see a chart or like an app, a phone app showing this is how much the department's costing me as a taxpayer every day, would I vote for these things to be enforced?
Can you
I've been
please
pulled
wrap
over for
up your
all kinds of
comments?
nonsense. Excuse me?
Please wrap up your comments.
How many minutes am I at?
You're over 5.
Oh. Yeah, that's true. All right. I'll wrap it up here. Sorry, I've got some bullet points, some notes here. I encourage everybody to look up Sheriff Richard Mack. I've spoken to him on this matter. He agrees with me. He's all for this plan. The forefathers did not install a patrolling police force. Did they forget? No, we have a constitutional sheriff. The sheriff is elected constitutionally, and we can have a constitutional sheriff and move on from there. Furthermore, let's say you got 100 cops in Minot, and then a small amount that can cover the county. The county is way bigger than Minot. It makes so much more sense to just have one department that the people are directly in charge of by voting. If we have a bad sheriff, we can recall him, and we can go from there. But right now, all those city cop cars that can't go beyond Minot because they don't have jurisdiction, if you merge the departments, that could cover everything. It'd be more financially efficient. And furthermore, if you're not enforcing a bunch of unconstitutional BS, like what's happening right now, what's happened my entire lifetime, you don't need as many cops out there. You don't need so many cops to be looking for seatbelt violations and stuff like that. So what I'm pushing for is constitutional freedom. And I'm open to discussion if you guys want time for it. If not, thank you very much.
Continuing on with personal appearances, now is your opportunity to step forward to address the council.
Mr. Mayor and aldermen and alderwomen of the council, thank you for this time to speak to you. Why I'm up here tonight is I first of all would like to thank you for going with alternative 2 of the recommendation tonight. I think that was a fiscally responsive way to go about it, and I do believe that our police are doing a very good job. We know that there's issues in there, but I have a problem with how this has all been addressed from the beginning. The issue I take is that why weren't the proper grievance channels utilized? Why didn't you encourage people to sit down with you if need be, with the city manager, or through the proper HR channels? Why did we go to an investigative source before we encouraged those individuals to sit down with you? I know if I had my boss and I asked him, hey, I've got a problem with all my employees, is it okay if we just get somebody else to come in and take a look? I think the first thing he would ask me is, has everybody filed their report? I don't think he would give me a blanketed check and say, go ahead, hire an outside source. The problem is not so much with the police department, and thank you for your service. The problem and the morale, I'm sure, is really down in the toilet after that whole 160-page report giving everybody's dirty laundry out there. I know I'd be disturbed. I certainly don't have a clean doorstep. You're worried about how people are feeling on the police force. Why don't you sit down with them? Each of them. Find out what they like about their job and what they don't. But don't look to outsource it. Take ownership of where you're at. You went ahead, you got the report. It came in at twice what you guys had set aside. If I'm not mistaken, I think I saw bills written for $51,000 and then another for $24,000. Have all the checks cleared? I also read that when you did the contract with this investigative firm, that they were supposed to bill you, and in 30 days we would see what that bill is. So I'm being very sincerely honest about the transparency that you guys will provide and how you got to the point where you came in at double the amount. At $100,000, I think you could give Captain Plessis the training he needs. You say he's not equipped? Send him to training. When you look at why you're not getting the people to come to your office or to go through the proper channels of HR, you better be sitting down with HR. That's where this should have started. Not in he said, she said, in the bars, upset employees. I also had to run boards during COVID. I understand how much stress people were under at that time. And to be honest with you, I would have liked to have left the board. Unfortunately, I was presiding at that time at a very large church here in town, and we lost our pastor of over 20 years. I had employees there that all of them had something bad to say about each other. It was a nightmare because I had my own job, my own family, but I agreed to serve. So I took responsibility of where we were at, and I took time out of my day and my job, and I sat down with each of them and another party and made sure we documented and kept confidential what was occurring. I'm highly disappointed in the approach that you guys chose to take. And I don't think it was fiscally responsible. And I don't think that you guys have thought about the training that those that are over there in the police department could use in order to properly take care of the police department until we can find a permanent police chief, if there's not one in our community. It's always easy to hire somebody, throw it in somebody else's lap. I hope that you honestly look at it and can say, that $100,000, it was well spent. Because I certainly don't think it was. You skipped way too many channels. You went very quickly from complaints into hiring. If I'm not mistaken, it was less than a month that you guys had a firm, had already had a couple proposals, and that was it. I ask you that as other proposals come your way while you're serving, as other contracts come your way that you're vetting, as those contractors, have we hired them before? Have they come in over budget in the past? Are they on a list so you guys can see that? Because that's where I would start when I'm planning to spend the money that us taxpayers have put aside. Thank you for your time.
Continuing on with personal appearances, now is your opportunity to step forward.
Jeff McDougald. I just got a couple comments and something I noticed. The gentleman with the complaint about the noise, that's a valid concern. I understand that, would be very annoying. What I noticed about that I don't know who's keeping the time, is it you, Mr. Mayor? But that guy went a long time. I didn't time him, and fair enough. I noticed when Josiah came up here, Josiah Royce talking about the police department, you cut him off or tried to. You notified him at 5 minutes exactly. This last couple people up here, you didn't do that. I'm wondering if that was something you didn't want to get out of the way quick, or?
Mr. Bale, when he addressed the council, he finished his initial comments at just under 5 minutes. We
Yeah.
continued conversation up here with the council and Mr. Bale. We had question and answers and discussion up here. That's why Mr. Bale stayed up here.
I see. Like I said, I didn't time it. Was any of you interested in having a discussion about what Mr. Royce had talked about with the police department? It seems like a valid issue.
Well, there was no discussion. Nobody had any questions or comments, so.
Yeah. I just find that interesting. I mean, the noise is a problem and the police apparently are a problem, so it seems like more importance was put on the, in my opinion, maybe a lesser annoyance or problem, but just my observations. Thank you. Would anyone like to comment about the police?
I don't see any comments up here.
I'm not going to comment on the police, but our rules of order under city ordinances states that no speaker shall address the city council for a period longer than 5 minutes without permission given by the presiding officer, which is the mayor. Otherwise, it's the duty of the presiding officer to call the speaker to order upon expiration of the time limit. So that rule can be suspended at any time by a majority vote of the city council. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Fair
his
enough.
duty in the event that they go over 5 minutes.
Right,
to-
there was a little bit over
to
here
call
and there.
into
and
question.
It doesn't have to be exact, I know that. but-
Well, just so you know, it is in
Yeah.
our rules of order.
And like I said, I did not time the first guy, but it seemed quite long. But anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Continuing on with personal appearances, now is your opportunity to step forward to address the council.
Thank you, City Council, for this opportunity to speak with you. My name is Andrew Ronigan, and I'm up here to show my support to the police department of the city of Minot. For those of you that may not remember, back during October 17th of 2023, a vehicle crashed into the front of Broadway Liquor at the base of North Hill. There was an employee there that was hospitalized. That employee was my wife, Lacey Ronigan. Now, I understand that the Minot Police Department has had a lot of baggage and a lot of things that have happened recently with the police chief, but the men and women of the Minot Police Department are some of the finest people I have ever met at a time when I was at my worst. When my wife was on an ICU bed, I cannot remember the officer's name, but she called me on my wife's phone, and she let me know that she was with my wife, and she supported my wife when she was impaled on a liquor shelf. I almost lost my wife that night. And the people of the Minot Police Department need the support of the City Council and the residents of the City of Minot. And I believe the best way we can overcome these challenges the Minot Police Department faces today is not by looking to outside sources, but looking at the captain here, Captain Plessett, who would be more than able to help take over a permanent spot as the chief of police. The reason being is because unless you have served in the military or the police, these men and women form bonds that none of us could ever imagine to form by serving a community and putting their lives on the line every day. Captain Plessett, who has served with the Minot Police Department, understands these bonds better than anyone. And to try and bring an outsider in, no matter their credentials, could bring an outside perspective that could be helpful. You are correct. But we're rolling the dice and taking a gamble. It could also demoralize them even further. It could cause even more unnecessary and unneeded loss of police officers, fine men and women that serve our city and its people. So I'm asking that if you don't believe in Captain Plessett, that you take the time to talk with him. You give him the training and the support he needs. And the city of Minot shows that we can stand behind our police force, because without the city of Minot and its fine officers, I don't know if I would have a wife today or my 2 young boys would have their mother today. Thank you.
We are still in personal appearances. Now is your opportunity to step forward to address the council. Seeing none, we will move on to miscellaneous and discussion items. 8.1, First District Health Unit Year-End Report and Update on the Ward County Opioid Task Force.
Mr. Mayor, one quick comment. I want to be clear, and I know people are ready to leave, but what we just did with personal appearances, not all of it's always comfortable. It's not always a great thing, but we do it every meeting, and I just want to say how much I appreciate that, because that doesn't happen everywhere at every local subdivision. In fact, there's bills at the legislature right now trying to make sure that that happens. We do it right, and I wanted to commend you and just prior councils that do it the right way, because we do, and I want to thank you.
Thank you. Now it's time for First District.
Mayor Ross and members of the council. I'm Holly Bruckus. I'm the Executive Director at First District Health Unit. I didn't put together a PowerPoint presentation tonight. I did send in some information about our 2024 service summary. I know we have some new council members on right now and that didn't really get to see my presentation, but I promise you when I come back in June, I'll do a little more elaborate presentation. But I noticed that I didn't include the comparison for 2023 in part of my report. So I do have those numbers available if you're interested in comparing 2023 and 2024. And one thing I do want to remind the council, we track a lot of numbers on this paper. There are a lot of things that we do in public health that are really hard to measure or hard to, put numbers on. And for some of the new people on the council, I just wanted to give a little overview on kind of how public health came into existence in North Dakota. In the North Dakota Century Code, it does say that all land in North Dakota should be served by a public health unit. So across the state, there are 28 of us, and some of them are single county health units. Some of them are city-county combination, like Bismarck-Burley Public Health or Fargo-Cass. A lot of us in the western half of the state were multi-county health units. So First District, for example, has 7 counties. There's Southwestern District Health Unit. I think they have 5. So Western North Dakota and Eastern North Dakota look a lot different in the world of public health. So with that being said, the core functions that are laid out in public health are outlined in the North Dakota Century Code, talking about legislation. I think this might have just been last legislative session where they actually put into the Century Code what our core functions are. And I'll just read them off real quick. So we prevent communicable disease control, chronic disease and injury prevention, environmental health, maternal and child health, and then access to clinical care. Those are the things that we work on, not only in Minot, but in our 7 counties at First District Health Unit. So that's my service number report. If you have questions about that, if not, I'll move on to the opioid information that I included as well.
Are there any questions? Continue, Holly.
All right. The other document that I had sent to Michaela was the opioid task force. And I know I have presented some information before to this group, but this is the final plan that we had submitted to the Health and Human Services at the state, and it does include City of Minot's opioid settlement fund. So I just wanted an opportunity for everybody to have this, to ask questions. This just got kicked off in January of this year, so it's a really new program, but we spent a lot of time working up to this point, and in the plan it includes all of the community partners that we included. The Minot Police Department was a player at the table for sure. So with that, I'll stand for any questions that you guys have. what we're going to do is start a medication assisted treatment program in the Ward County Jail.
Any questions of Holly? Seeing none, thank you.
Well, that was easy. All right, thank you.
This time before, what's that? I mean, we'll, just before we get, before we move on the agenda, I just wanted, since we're in miscellaneous and discussion, I want to take an opportunity, we're about, I don't know, about six months in or 5 months into the economic review. And I just thought, Alderman Blessam, I thought it would be good for you, and if Alderman Pittner want to step in, give us an update on the process, how it's going, and kind of a timeline where you see, or if there's a finish line.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and Paul certainly jump in where necessary. I feel like things are going good. You know, I think we've got a mix on the committee of folks that have been involved in economic development things, whether at banks or other committees, and some that are brand new to the whole thing and are learning as they go. And I think that's a good thing. And so we're coming towards the end of our learning phase, I guess is the way that I would think of it, where we've had presentations from North Dakota Commerce, we've had presentations from the city. We're in the middle of presentations right now from MAC EDC on their contributions and their way of looking at it. This past week, Finance Director Dave Lakefield gave a great update to us on the dollars, you know, the sales tax dollars. Where are they going? How are they being used today? So I guess my thought on it is, with where we're at in the process, we're coming to the end of that phase. We've got some notes along the way on program things that we've kind of thrown out as bullet points that could be part of a final recommendation. I think we're gonna, as we finish up that learning phase, we're gonna move more into that. You know, what are the ideas? What are the I guess the concepts that we're gonna bring back to council, both for adjustments to current programs and potentially different thought, you know, different ways of looking at things. And that is the vision that I had from it from the beginning and what I was looking for. So I think it's, so far it's gone, I think, pretty well. And I think we'll have a set of bullet points for council. I'm thinking kind of, I want to make sure that anything that has a budget impact that makes this round, if we feel that that's necessary. So I would think that we'll have a set of recommendations for council May-ish is kind of the thought process I have. That'd give us another 5-6 meetings to make sure that we get through what we want to do. And you know, really part of that could be some type of, one of those recommendations could be some type of ongoing discussion that needs to keep going. Because one of the things we're learning with these programs is that they do have to evolve, because the conditions that were on the ground when something was implemented may not be the same today. And we're coming to the end of some of those discussions. So Paul, if you got anything to add to that, certainly.
Not much. I'll give a little bit of fluff, but because Mike covered most of it. But I think that having this constant conversations, that's one thing that's come out to me through having that this committee set up, is that revisiting this every year, 2 years is important, because we put these programs in place and then we just let them go and let them work, and maybe they need to evolve, like Mike stated, to better suit our community. And it honestly has been I've been well versed in the programs that the city runs. I've gained a lot of knowledge in the state-run programs that the lenders have a lot of experience in, and even some of our the other members of the committee put us in touch with a lot of resources, or even just remind us of a lot of resources. 2040 comp plan that we have, surveys done by our communities, these things that we've done that we need to implement into our decision making, and the viability of some of these programs. So again, I think it's been a great conversation, great discussion, and Michaela's been great taking notes on the bullet points that we will circle back to and really come up with a recommendation for this body to take some action on, possibly.
Good. And so just one thing to add then that Paul kind of reminded me of is, just as an example of one of the things that's been a part of the discussion, we are now getting to the point where some of the state-run loan programs, the PACE and FlexPACE and those types of things, they're coming to the point where they're going to be revolving, which is how that plan works. The dollars that the city contributes to that through the Service Basin Planning Council, some of those loans are now coming due. And so we're going to see if the revolving nature of that is actually working the way it's intended, because long-term, that's how that's supposed to work. And so that's one of the nice things about doing this on kind of a recurring basis is that you don't just set that top spinning and hope it works. You actually check and see if it worked, because we may need to adjust. And so I think that's what this is going to give us the opportunity to do.
Good. And before adjourning, I know it wasn't on the agenda, but are there any legislative topics, anything for discussion about what's happening down in Bismarck?
No, Mr. Mayor, I'll just give a real fast update. You know, I was down again today on a different bill related to state spending. While in front of the Tax and Finance Committee, you know, again, I think we're seeing the exact same thing. I think they really are honing in on this idea of a buy down of some type to try to lessen the property tax load. Again, these are kind of the governor and working with leadership's concepts with a cap on local spending. Although we certainly gave them, you know, something to think about, I think that's still where that is headed. And my hope is that in that committee that they are still considering other structural items that could also help transparency. And the concept that's been thrown out there is the idea of maybe moving to square footage as a way of looking at the property tax calculations as opposed to assessment. There's a bill that's on the table still within that committee to look at that. And so I think it's kind of a continuation of what the discussion's been, but if anything, I see that as more solid even than the last time we met.
Anything for Paul?
Just want to thank staff for the emails and stuff like that. I'm never going to be able to make a Friday meeting because I've got to pick up a little kid from daycare. So, but again, I appreciate the updates and the ongoing communication. So.
Thank you. Harold.
Mr. Mayor, along this conversation, last city council meeting, council directed staff to prepare a letter outlining the council's position with regards to the property tax bills and those kinds of things. Staff did distribute that letter to council, and I guess staff needs direction about whether or not that letter represents the position of council and whether or not we can begin using that in submitting as testimony to the legislature.
Well, I think the legislature got our message.
They certainly did.
And I think the motion, after reviewing the motion, I think is just preparing the letter. I don't think it's actually sending the letter, but I think the intention of the council, the vote of the council was well heard in Bismarck. And I'm not sure, unless there's objection or further discussion, I'm not sure there's anything more we need to do with it.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I guess my comment on that would be that staff has fulfilled what we needed out of that. Had things gone differently, we may have been in a position where we would want to send that letter or use it as testimony, but there's no question that the message was loud and clear and heard in Bismarck.
Harold.
Just one other matter, and it does not pertain to the legislative session. As part of my contract, we're at the point of the year where I receive an annual evaluation. Contract outlines some specific dates, of which the council's evaluation of me was supposed to be completed and turned into the HR director by January 22nd. I have not yet received that, so I'm asking for a timeline on when I will receive my annual evaluation for 2024.
At this time, I think it would be probably proper, I guess, that we get together with the acting HR. Would that be Tom, Joyce? For discussion on that and getting a timetable out to you. I wasn't aware that if all the evaluations had been submitted.
Mr. Mayor, I don't know if this is the right direction to take, but I guess I would throw out the idea that we could bring a motion to set a special meeting of the council with Mr. Joyce to complete that. The hard part is that immediately is a public meeting the moment that we do that. So I know the process that I've seen, and I don't know how it's been in the past, so someone else would have to mention that part. But we do have documents that, you know, mine is essentially complete but not submitted. And so that I know that's where I'm sitting, but I'm not sure how the council has proceeded in past years.
Mark.
I guess I can answer that. In the past, everybody submitted their document evaluation to the HR department, and all of that data was compiled and combined, and then went back out to the council and to the city manager. That's the process.
Can I?
Rob.
And I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot. Tom, how many are you missing from us? Do you know offhand? 2, okay.
Okay.
So,
Mayor Ross, Alderman Fuller. 2 meaning, we'll work through this, but the 2 that I was referring to were the 2 performance evaluations that require council's input. So that would be the city managers and the city attorney. Those are the 2.
did we get a second one? For city attorney? Because
Have you not been sent the documents for the city attorney's evaluation? She gets one every year as well, and you're
I
the
was
director.
not. I received the city manager's one, but I did not get the city attorney one.
Mr. Mayor, I don't believe I
ahead.
received the city attorney one either.
And in the past, that has been, last year, it was through our online ADP, where I submitted it and then got counsel from the president, asked for input from the president and the vice president of the council before submitting that into ADP for feedback. So that's where that's at, and that's probably why, because on ADP, from what I understand, and I could be wrong, they can't have multiple inputs. They can't send out multiple assignments for that input. So
So Mayor Ross, members of council, I will follow up with the subject matter experts in HR tomorrow and send you all an email so we're all on the same page and tracking that collectively. I do, and ADP may change, like all systems. There's new versions, et cetera. But the version that I've seen this year for the 2024 evaluations, we can include what we'd call contributors, so everybody can provide feedback. So, for example, other employees that on the greater team that I was not a rater or at all, I wasn't in their chain of command, but their department head asked me for contributor feedback. So ADP does have that. There is that process that we can investigate and we can use and potentially use for these. So I will follow up on that, and I will get information to all of you.
thank you. Any other
Good
questions?
questions for me?
Well, I guess maybe we need to answer Harold's question. Can we get it done within 2 weeks to give him his review? Wait, by the next city council meeting? Okay.
Without
Okay.
objection? Okay. All right. Anything further? Lisa?
Thank you. There's been lots of discussion about the police department tonight, and I'm appreciative of those that got up and said some kind, supportive words. As I've driven around the town, I've noticed that a lot of people have taken the encouragement recommendation from the mayor and they put blue lights outside of their residences. I'm hoping that shows some support from the police, or for the police department. And also, across town, there was a very generous donation that was made, and there are digital billboards out, again, thanking our police department from the community, just showing that support. So I know that support is out there, and it's good when you can say those positive things and let them hear it, because it means a lot to them.
Thank you, Lisa. I echo those remarks. Anything further? Seeing none, next item on the agenda is adjournment. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.